In a high-rise conference room of a major bank, a cold, sharp-tongued female CEO storms in and angrily barks orders at a young black woman she mistakes for an assistant. Without hesitation, she hurls insults and condescension, mocking her appearance, questioning her intelligence, and treating her like she doesn't belong. But just as the deal is about to begin, the black woman calmly reveals her true identity, and in seconds the balance of power flips. What happens next leaves the entire room stunned. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. The conference room on the 21st floor of Morgan Heights Bank was quiet, cold, and polished to the point of sterility. Walls lined with frosted glass gave the illusion of openness, but the silence inside felt tight, like the room was holding its breath. The long mahogany table at the center gleamed under white ceiling lights, untouched and perfectly set with branded notepads and pens that no one would use. It was the kind of place made for men in expensive suits and million-dollar lies, and that morning it belonged to Harriet Langston. Harriet Langston stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, her back rigid, arms crossed as she stared down at the city she believed she owned a piece of. The sky was gray, threatening rain, but Harriet's mood had already arrived with the storm. She wore a fitted navy blue skirt suit, sharp at the shoulders, tighter than necessary at the waist, and heels that echoed with every step like a metronome of authority. Her platinum blonde bob was stiff with hairspray, her lips painted a punishing red. Her gold Cartier watch ticked loudly in her head. She hated waiting, especially when money was on the line. She glanced toward the young black woman, quietly arranging the chairs by the table. Dark skin, modest blouse, no designer label in sight. She didn't say anything yet, just stared for a second too long. Then, in that dry, clipped tone Harriet reserved for baristas and hotel clerks, she barked, "You there, hang that up for me now, yeah?" She tossed her camel-wool trench coat toward a nearby chair without looking if it landed. "No, sorry, Richard, not you," she snapped into her AirPods. "I was talking to the bank's receptionist. Actually, Mrs. Stewart, I'm not, excuse me." She turned her head toward the woman again. "Who taught you your manners? This is an important call." The young woman, who hadn't introduced herself yet, blinked once and stepped back, calmly but without a word. She didn't pick up the coat. Harriet narrowed her eyes. "Didn't I ask you to hang that up?" "You did," the woman replied, her voice neutral, even soft. "But like I was saying—" "No buts. Today is not the day for excuses or laziness. Now just do what I ask. Go on and fetch me a coffee while you're at it. Milk and 2 sugars. Chop chop." The woman hesitated just for a breath. "You want me to bring you coffee?" Harriet scoffed, loud. "Yes. That's what you people do, isn't it?" She waved her hand in the air like she was swatting away a fly. "No? Very well then. Please, wait in the conference room like a good assistant." Harriet spun back toward the window, already forgetting the woman's face. "Sorry again, Richard," she said smoothly. "I just got to the merger closing. Yeah, that's right. I'm waiting for the CEO and the bank manager to sign off. This deal's going to save our company and make me rich in the process. Not bad for a Tuesday." Behind her, the woman quietly placed a steaming cup of coffee down in front of Harriet, who didn't even say thank you. She picked it up, took a sip, then spit it back in disgust. "I said oat milk, are you deaf? Are you trying to kill me?" "You said milk and 2 sugars, the woman replied, still calm. Harriet slammed the cup down. "Rule number 1 of being a good assistant, never talk back to your superior. Now make it again, and make it right this time. Today is tremendously important to me. I need to be prepping, not babysitting some nitwit receptionist who can't even brew a proper cup." "I'm not a receptionist," the woman said flatly. Harriet turned slowly, smirking. "Fine, assistant, whatever the PC police want to call you these days. The point is, you're here to make my job easier, not harder." The woman opened her mouth to explain, but Harriet cut her off again. "What did I say about talking back? Yes, you work for the bank, but right now, I'm the bank's biggest customer, which means you work for me. And if you just shut up and sit down for a minute, you might actually learn something from your better." The woman didn't move. Her posture was steady, eyes focused, lips pressed. Harriet leaned forward, voice dropping like a trap door. "Oh yes, I said it. I am your better. I graduated from Brown, got my MBA from UCLA, and started a Fortune 500 company from scratch. That wasn't luck. That was talent, effort, risk, sacrifice. Looking at you, she glanced up and down the woman's clothes like she was judging meat in a butcher's shop. I doubt you even went to college or graduated if you did. You've probably never taken a real risk in your life, never poured your heart and soul into something bigger than you. And as a result, you're here, working a minimum wage job that a trained beagle could do. So yes, sweetheart, I am, by every possible definition, better than you. There was a long pause. Not the kind where someone doesn't know what to say, but the kind where they choose not to say it. The young woman stared at Harriet, her face unreadable, but her silence wasn't weakness. It was warning. Finally she spoke, just 6 quiet words. You really shouldn't rush to judgment. Harriet laughed, cold and amused. Don't worry. In about 20 minutes I'll be signing a deal worth tens of millions, and by then I won't have to care what someone like you thinks of me. She turned back to the window, sipping the wrong coffee again, like she was drinking from a chalice of power, never seeing the quiet storm forming behind her. And the storm had a name, Carrie Johnson. But she hadn't said it yet. Not yet. Harriet Langston tapped her heel against the polished floor, impatience vibrating through her limbs like static electricity. She glanced at the clock on the wall, 8 minutes late. The CEO and the bank manager were both late, unprofessional, typical. She shook her head and muttered under her breath, "This is why I don't trust these small-time institutions." She turned again toward the young black woman, still standing quietly by the door, hands calmly clasped in front of her as if waiting for something. Or someone. "Don't you have something to do other than loiter?" Harriet snapped. "Go find your boss, or whoever it is that signs the checks around here. I've been stuck dealing with your useless face all morning. I've had enough." The woman didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, didn't offer an excuse, just tilted her head slightly as if weighing whether Harriet's behavior even deserved a response. Then she turned and walked out of the room, not in a hurry, not apologetic, just controlled. That irritated Harriet even more. "God, the entitlement," she muttered, sinking into one of the high-backed leather chairs like it belonged to her. "This generation doesn't know their place. Manners are dead." She pressed her AirPod again. "Hey, Richard, yeah? I'm still waiting. I swear I've been sitting here dealing with the most hopeless excuse for a receptionist/assistant/whatever she is. Rude, argumentative, probably thinks she's too good for the job. You know the type." Just then the door creaked open again. Harriet turned, expecting someone junior, someone flustered, someone finally ready to grovel. But it wasn't the assistant. It was a man in his late 40s with silver at his temples and a bank pin on his lapel. His smile was formal, and his eyes scanned the room like a checklist. "Good morning, Miss Langston," he said, extending a hand. "Apologies for the delay. I'm Martin Lowell, Regional Director." Harriet stood quickly, all smiles now, switching personas with the grace of a Broadway actress. "Oh, no trouble at all. I'm just excited to make this merger official. It's a big day for both our companies." Lowell nodded, his handshake firm. "It certainly is. We've been reviewing everything, and I was hoping to say a quick hello to Ms. Johnson before we begin." Harriet blinked. "Mr. Johnson?" "Yes," Lowell replied. "Carrie Johnson, our executive CEO. She said she arrived even before you did." Harriet's smile twitched. "That can't be right. I've been the only one in this room since I got here. Well," she scoffed, "unless you're counting that assistant, who spent the morning trying to sabotage my focus." Lowell furrowed his brow. "The assistant?" Harriet crossed her arms and leaned in like she was delivering a confidential tip. "I didn't want to make a scene, but now that you mention it, yes. That girl you've got out there, she's terrible. Rude, slow, zero professionalism. Honestly, if I were you, I'd fire her and hire someone who understands basic corporate etiquette." Lowell opened his mouth to respond, but the door opened again. And in walked the woman Harriet had dismissed all morning. Same calm step, same steady eyes, But now she wore something different. Not just confidence, not just control, but authority. And something about the way Lowell straightened, the way he smiled as she entered, told Harriet, too late, that she'd made a very big mistake. "Ms. Johnson," Lowell greeted warmly. "So nice to see you again." "Likewise," the woman said, returning his handshake. Harriet took a step back, her voice suddenly dry. "Wait, Carrie Johnson?" The woman turned her head slowly, eyes meeting Harriet's with cool precision. "That's right." Harriet's voice faltered. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I tried to," Carrie said, her tone still even. "Twice. But you were too busy giving orders to listen." No, that's not. If I had known." "That makes it worse," Carrie replied, taking a step closer. "You looked at me, judged me, decided I wasn't worth your attention based on my clothes, my skin, my silence. You didn't ask who I was, you assumed." Listen, I didn't mean, none of this was personal." Carrie raised an eyebrow. "Wasn't it?" Harriet tried to laugh, but it came out choked. "Look, we're all under pressure today. I think we got off on the wrong foot." Carrie looked past her, toward Lowell. "Let's begin the signing. I'd like this handled quickly." And as Harriet stood there, rooted in place, something in her expression began to break. Not guilt, not remorse, but fear, real fear. Because the deal she came to seal was no longer in her hands. It never had been. Harriet Langston stood frozen, her designer heels suddenly feeling a size too small, her carefully composed face starting to crack. The room hadn't changed. Same cold lights, same sleek walls, but everything felt different now. The air was heavier, thicker. The energy in the room had shifted, and not in her favor. She tried to recover, to retake control of the situation, but her voice didn't carry the same weight it did just moments ago. "Listen, Ms. Johnson," she started, throwing on her most diplomatic smile, the kind she used at charity galas and board meetings. "We clearly got off to a rough start. But I think we can both agree this deal is too important to be derailed by a simple misunderstanding." Carrie didn't smile back. She didn't even blink. She walked past Harriet and took a seat at the head of the table, the seat Harriet had silently claimed as hers just 15 minutes ago. Carrie opened a folder in front of her with a calm precision, her movements quiet but deliberate. "You're right," she said, her voice smooth, clipped. "This deal is important, but what almost derailed it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was your behavior." Harriet flinched like she'd been slapped, but quickly straightened. "I was under the impression I was dealing with a receptionist. I would never have said those things if I'd known you were—" "That," Carrie said, raising her eyes sharply, "is exactly the problem. You didn't say what you said because you thought I was someone important. You said it because you thought I wasn't. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't even listen. You just assumed." Across the table, Martin Lowell kept quiet, his eyes moving between the two women, expression unreadable. A junior bank associate stepped in, quietly placing updated contracts in front of Carrie. Harriet watched it happen, watched the stack of documents land in front of someone she had just called a minimum wage assistant, and it felt like the floor was tilting under her. Harriet swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. "Look, I came here in good faith. I'm offering your bank a major opportunity. My company may be struggling, but this merger would stabilize both sides. We can't afford personal politics." Carrie closed the folder in front of her. She didn't raise her voice, but somehow it cut deeper than yelling ever could. "You want to talk about affordability? Let's. Because the truth is, the only thing either of our companies can't afford is you." The words hung in the air like thunder. Harriet blinked. "Excuse me?" Carrie turned slightly in her seat, directing her voice to Lowell without taking her eyes off Harriet. "Martin, I called the Langston Corps Board of Directors this morning. I informed them that while our bank was still open to the merger, we would no longer proceed under its current leadership. I gave them two options. Either they restructure their executive team or we walk." Harriet's mouth dropped open. Her chest rose, then fell too fast. You went behind my back?" Carrie stayed seated, still calm, still composed. "No, Ms. Langston, I didn't go behind your back. I moved around your behavior. There's a difference." Harriet's voice rose, cracking at the edges. "You can't fire me. This is my company." Lowell finally spoke, his tone neutral but unflinching. "Actually, your board can, and they already have. Effective immediately." "No." Harriet shook her head, backing away from the table slightly, like she could physically dodge the words. "This is outrageous. My company needs me. Without me, it's going to collapse." Carrie raised an eyebrow. "You mean the same company you mismanaged into needing a bailout? The one that lost 37% market share in 2 years while you gave yourself a bonus? That company? I built it from the ground up." "No," Carrie said, standing now facing her fully. "You inherited $3 million from your grandfather and blew through it in less than 18 months. What you built was a mess, and now I have to clean it up." Harriet looked around the room, searching for anyone to defend her, but there were no allies here, only professionals, bankers, executives, people who understood numbers and control and optics. She reached for her bag like it might hold some magical solution, some escape clause. "This is a mistake, you need me." Lowell looked at the security staff who had just entered quietly through the side door. "Matt, would you please escort Miss Langston out?" You can't do this to me," Harriet shouted now, no longer polished, no longer poised. "This is my deal. I started this." Carrie's voice was cool as ice. "And I just finished it." And with that, Harriet Langston, the woman who had walked in thinking she owned the room, was walked out of it. The door clicked shut behind Harriet Langston with a hollow finality. The echo of her heels, once loud and commanding, was now a distant memory fading into silence. The room seemed to exhale the moment she left. Carrie Johnson stood still for a beat, letting the weight of the moment settle like dust after a storm. No one spoke. No one moved. Even Martin Lowell, seasoned and stoic, sat with his hands folded neatly in front of him, watching her with quiet respect. Carrie slowly turned back toward the table, her fingers grazing the edge of the documents in front of her, but her eyes remained focused. "Let's make something very clear," she said, voice steady and low, the kind of voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. "This merger is not just about numbers, it's about values, trust, accountability. And what just happened here, what we all witnessed, was not some personal drama, it was a business decision, a necessary one." Lowell gave a small nod, but he didn't interrupt. He knew better. He recognized the presence of someone in full control of the room, not because of force, not because of rank, but because she earned it. Carrie pulled the pen from her folder and uncapped it with a soft, deliberate click. "Now," she continued, flipping the final page, "the revised terms reflect a new leadership team. Langston Corp's assets will be absorbed under transitional oversight, and will begin restructuring immediately. I've already spoken to 3 candidates to fill the CEO vacancy, people who actually know how to lead with integrity." There was a murmur of agreement from the junior associates in the room. Subtle, respectful, but clear. The mood had shifted entirely. What started as a power play from a self-important executive had become a lesson in who really holds power. The one who listens, the one who leads by action, not ego. Carrie signed her name with precision, no hesitation. She passed the documents to Lowell, who signed them in turn, then looked up with something close to admiration. "That," he said simply, "was one hell of a negotiation." Carrie gave the faintest smile. "No," she said, "that was accountability, long overdue." Just then the door opened again. Not Harriet this time, but Daniel Tran, the quiet associate who had witnessed the earlier exchange. He stepped in with a tablet in hand and a knowing look on his face. "All done," he said. "Harriet's board issued the formal removal paperwork. It's finalized." Carrie nodded. "Good. Thank you, Daniel." He hesitated for a second, then added, "For what it's worth, a lot of us saw the way she treated you. We've seen it before. Most people just let it slide." Carrie looked at him, really looked at him. "And what did you see?" Daniel didn't flinch. "I saw someone pretend not to be important, just to see how others would act when they thought you weren't." Carrie held his gaze, then gave a slow nod. "Sometimes, it's the only way to find out who's really in the room." With the deal closed, the papers signed, and Harriet Langston nothing more than a warning tale, Carrie gathered her things. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her actions had spoken louder than anything she could say. But as she reached the door, she paused and turned back. "If anyone needs me," she said calmly, "I'll be in the boardroom upstairs. This merger is just the beginning. We've got work to do." And with that she walked out. Not with noise, not with drama, but with something far more powerful, undeniable presence. 2 weeks later, the same conference room felt different. Warmer somehow. The sunlight filtered through the frosted windows in long, golden lines, softening the sharp edges of the glass and steel. The table, still the same rich mahogany, now had folders neatly aligned in front of each seat, fresh pens, fresh energy. It wasn't just a place for signatures anymore. It was a space for something real to begin. Carrie Johnson entered first, her steps measured, her focus unchanged. She wore a navy suit, subtle pinstripes, and a pair of flats that let her glide instead of stomp. She didn't need noise. She brought presence. As she reached her seat at the head of the table, a junior associate stood up instinctively. "Good morning, Miss Johnson," he said with a nervous nod. "Everything's ready. The Langston transition team is downstairs. Boardroom upstairs is prepped for your quarterly presentation." Carrie offered a brief, appreciative nod. "Thank you, Jarrett." Behind her, Daniel Tran stepped in, tablet in hand, and a calm confidence he hadn't shown 2 weeks ago. "I went over the merger rollout plan. It's solid," he said. "But I've got a couple of thoughts on the diversity training revisions you asked for." Carrie turned to him with interest. "Let's hear them after lunch. I want everyone involved in this deal to be in the room, not just reading the fine print." Daniel smiled, then added quietly, "Feels different around here." "It is different," Carrie said, and her voice carried a weight that didn't need to be explained. There was no sign of Harriet Langston, no echo of her stilettos, no sharp perfume cutting through the air like a threat. Her name had already been scrubbed from the plaques, her seat reassigned to someone with both experience and humility. Her exit hadn't made headlines, but the lesson she left behind had spread fast. Word got around in boardrooms and break rooms alike. You never know who you're talking to. Carrie glanced toward the door as a few more team members entered, each greeting her with a tone that said respect, not fear. She acknowledged them with grace, but didn't linger. She wasn't here to be admired. She was here to build. Lowell entered last, carrying a small folder. "Ms. Johnson," he said with a courteous nod, "just wanted to personally thank you again. We've already received requests from 2 other firms interested in partnering, partly because they saw what happened here. They said it gave them confidence in our leadership." Carrie didn't look surprised, just resolute. "People follow example, Martin, not words, not logos, not statements on the website. They watch who you protect, and who you're willing to let go." He nodded slowly. "You made a lot of people reconsider how they operate. Including me." A quiet settled over the room again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was focus. Carrie tapped the table twice with her fingers, not impatient, just ready. "We've got a company to grow," she said simply. "Let's make sure we do it right this time." As the room came to life with documents rustling and voices trading strategy, Carrie sat back for a brief second and looked around, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with clarity. The kind that only comes from being underestimated, dismissed, and then choosing not to shout back, but to outlast. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is stay quiet long enough to show them who you really are, and when you do, the whole damn room listens.